So to get started, John Miners, please.
Please pray with me. Dear Heavenly Father, help us today to remember your first, and as Jesus said, the most important commandment is to first of all love you and love others as ourselves. Help us to forget the complexities of life and only to concentrate on that thing which you told us and commanded us. The most important thing is to love one another. Help us in our Rotary service, Lord, to honestly and truly put others above ourselves, to show love and compassion and mercy to those who we come across. And we, as always, Lord, we thank you for this meal and ask you to bless it. And everyone said? Amen.
Person. This is not who I was anticipating. Hello, Mr. Porter.
Morning.
Good morning. Are you our speaker this morning or Mr. Harnish?
I'm on the board of the High Speed Rail Alliance. Mr. Harnish is a speaker. He'll be joining shortly.
All right, excellent. Good to have you here this morning. We're just going to go through some business items and get through that portion, and then we'll get to hear from you gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay. Profound thoughts. Tom, as you finish your breakfast, walk slowly.
We're coming. Morning. My first thought today is from Bob Dylan. He said, "A hero is someone who understands the responsibility that comes with his freedom."
Did he say it or did he sort of sing it?
Well, my second thought is from Paul Harvey. Pretty sure he said this. When your outgo exceeds your income, the upshot may be your downfall. And the last thought is from Henny Youngman. I just got back from a pleasure trip. I took my mother-in-law to the airport.
Oldie, but a goodie. All right. Well, let's do happy finds and drawings at this point.
I've got a happy find because I miscalled Mark or Ryan Lilly. I called him Mark.
You did it again.
I did it again.
You just called
I think
Mark
it's like
Ryan.
20 years with a guy. Any other finds? Rich, you want to just pick one, read the last three digits?
042.
Ooh, early on. You said you were due.
That's incredible.
You're welcome.
There you go.
I got $3.
No. One of them is a 5.
All right. So a couple of quick things, and I'm going to bring John Miners up for an important update on things. Yeah, now you got to do this. So anyway, the Park Walk for Cancer is coming up. Those of us who are participating in that, that's on May 1st. I will say also that I put out, and please take one, the district is making a push since there's no cost, no travel, from the comfort of your own home, and you certainly don't have to participate in the whole thing, but an opportunity to participate in a district conference without having to drive 2 hours and rent a room. So the district has gone through the expense of creating these and sending them out. I got them in the mail yesterday. Just information on May 1st. And then I think May 3rd through 6th, there's a couple hour sessions each. So they would love to see the broad Rotarians, not just the club presidents and things like that, participate at least partially in it. And there's no requirement to participate in the whole thing. So let me now let John, who's part of village discussions, give an important update on the summer plans for the village and our club.
Morning, everyone, and those of you online. So last night, the village board became informed about the fact that our 4 planned events at the park here, the musical events, would have required quite a bit of expense and manpower that was not planned for. At very minimum, $50,000. Most likely 75 to 80 in reality. And that money's has never been budgeted for. So it was a great idea. We're very sorry for the inconvenience of the Rotary Club, the members of the community and those who wanted to attend these events, but it just is undoable. Also because at Indian Head Park, the construction of the new stage was going to be ongoing through the summer, as well as trying to put on these events, which, I mean, safety-wise and space-wise, just, again, it just can't work. So the board voted to cancel the first three and to do the fourth one, which is the Mount Olive group, singing group. And the new stage will be completed by that time. So it won't be a construction area. I did talk to Ron, the Department of Public Works. They promised, though, even though it'll be a new construction area, it'll be asphalted all the way around the new pavilion. Plus any place it is grass will have, that construction matting put down, so it's not a mud pit for people to have to walk. That was my concern. Also, it'll be a much smaller group. That band does not bring on near as many people, and our first time through as a village to put this on, we would prefer to have a smaller crowd and not have to handle such massive crowds that the other bands would have drawn. So the board, I'm here as liaison between the Rotary Club and the village board. We recognize the Rotary Club has spent a lot of time, money, effort, and energy and looking to have dialogue with the club on how we can reimburse you or make it right with the club. So that's the report. That's the way it is. Any questions? Anybody that's here or online? I'd be glad to answer.
They're done on building, because they're building that temporary stage. That's just
Yeah, unfortunately, it's already pretty much built.
right.
The one thing of the stage that we didn't know was that the building inspector requires it to be sprayed with a fire retardant.
Yeah.
Which was an additional $3,000, which again was no one knew, no one budgeted, which it just becomes undoable, So, nor was there anyone planned to apply that.
All right, so, but the permanent stage is budgeted for, the village board is completely on board for that.
Yes,
That's
so
going
last
forward.
night we voted to pay for the engineering for it to be done. And the plan is, there's a plan for when the bids come in, when the building will start. It'll be finished by September 11th for the final one with Mount Olive.
And then any future events at that complex, obviously, will be properly planned and budgeted for.
Yes, you're darn right. Which we
Because you
definitely learned through this, that, it was a great idea to bring in all these high-powered big bands. But if you recognize the space that's allowable down there, we can't have 3,000 people show up. It's just not good.
It seemed ambitious, but you
I don't know. There was some assumption that there was a lot of discussions that have gone on, but
Fair enough. And it wasn't. It was kind of a one-man show, and actually the village board was not involved, other than to say, "Oh, we're going to do some temporary bands," and that's all the village board really knew. And so, when the village staff came to us and said, "Help! we can't do this, and we're hugely in trouble money-wise," we had to take action. So, thank you.
Okay, well, we'll regroup for our plans for the summer. We still have Balloon Fest, likely Fall Fest. If September 11th, we'll talk about participation in that. Not to talk about it today, but just to say that it's out there in terms of potential jack-o'-lantern jaunt, Halloween haunt. So it'll be more toward the back end of the summer, but Balloon Fest obviously is still planned. That's a chamber event, and that's hopefully going to go on as planned. So in that, upcoming, we got Teacher of the Month next week, and then we're working on speaker for April 22nd. And April 29th is going to be an important business meeting. We're going to kind of recap what's been going on this past year, look ahead for goals for the next Rotary year, and talk about what the board and committee structure is going to look like for the next Rotary year, which is starts on July 1st. That's what I have. I will say that doesn't look like Rick is on yet, so we'll hold off on that. Maybe that's.
He just texted me. He's in the office firing up the computer, so he'll be on momentarily.
Yep, he's connecting in. Okay, so anything else anybody has to bring up? Otherwise, we'll get to our speaker. Yeah, go ahead, Rachel.
I was just telling Tom, those of you that have Pro Healthcare as your provider, you have My Chart. You can start to sign up for your vaccines online. And actually, we're extending to here in Mukwonago soon. We'll be giving vaccines here, Oconomowoc, and the Brookfield clinics. So we'll be able to get more of the community vaccinated. So I'm not sure how long we'll continue at Waukesha Memorial as our hub, but they do have the freezers, Pfizer vaccines, and so I think that'll really help get herd immunity in the community. So
Yeah, how about the 16, 17-year-olds? Because up till now, it's like you're not sure what vaccine would be available, and obviously a 16-year-old, 17-year-old can't get the Moderna.
yeah,
Well, okay.
I don't know yet.
Okay,
what they're
don't
doing
know.
with that. Yeah.
Will we be able to choose which we like?
You can. You just kind of have to. I think the problem is we order from the state, and the state sends what they have.
Yeah.
So a lot of times people will call ahead of time to see what we have. We've been getting a lot more Pfizer.
Okay. Not so much Johnson. Well, they
Johnson-
screwed up 15 million doses in Maryland and Delaware. So
Yeah, but Johnson, we haven't been getting a lot of those. More of the Pfizer. I don't know about when they come in. But.
All right. Yeah. I mean, obviously, as a society and community, we're making progress. Good numbers on the vaccines, although cases are going up because of the variants and such. So we're sort of in a battle of what stays ahead of the other. So hopefully everybody continues to get vaccinated. All right. So we have a couple gentlemen online, and our speaker, Rick Harnish. Let me do some background on Rick. Rick, you should be able to share your screen when that time comes and show some slides if you have them. I know since I moved to the area 12, 13 years ago, I know in the background, every so often the top of high-speed rail comes up. And I must say, I never paid a lot of attention to it. I know sometimes it gets a little controversial, sometimes it's ambitious and things like that. But Mr. Harnish has been involved a long time. He helped found the High-Speed Rail Alliance in 1993. His passion is revitalizing the region that he's grew up in the area, in the Chicago area, I believe. So they're advocates for integrated rail and transit, connected by 200-mile-an-hour plus high-speed rail lines. The native of the Chicago area. He's been executive director of the High-Speed Rail Alliance since 2001. So obviously been involved in this topic for a long time, and in an effort to stay up on, a few weeks ago we had identity theft. Let's find out about this topic that is still out there, and it'll be interesting to hear what the latest is on that and how it potentially fits into the future of the Midwest. So thanks for being here this morning, and Rick, go ahead and take it away.
Excellent. Thank you very much for having us. I really appreciate it. It's been a while, but there's been a couple of times that I've ridden the, why is this not working the way I want it to? There we go.
It looks good here.
There's been a couple of times that I've ridden the streetcar up there, and I have it on my to-do list to ride the dinner train version. And boy, I love those pies.
That is not high.
No, it's not high-speed rail at all. So we are a nonprofit. Our purpose is education. So we strive to be the most knowledgeable outside source of information on what high-speed rail is, why we should do it, and what steps leaders can take in order to make it happen. This is a picture of an Acela train, which is currently the fastest train in the United States, which links Washington, New York, and Boston. And it demonstrates that folks will ride the train if it's fast enough, frequent enough, and provides high enough quality service. You know, we haven't invested in this to the extent we should, so there aren't enough seats. You know, I'm sorry, it's distracting me. Can you mute the main one that you're showing the flag on? Sorry about that. There's some feedback. Thank you. The challenge here, though, is because we've kind of neglected it, haven't invested as much as we should, there aren't enough seats for the people who want to ride the train. And so Amtrak at this point is probably selling the tickets at a lot higher rate than we think they should, but it really demonstrates that people will take the train. We do this, you know, primarily because it'll build stronger communities, both in terms of relationships between people, between vendors and companies, between communities. So we are spread out as a country, with, you know, the colleges being in one place. So maybe the college kids are there and then they move to a different place to get a job. You know, maybe they would like to stay in a smaller town, but they find it necessary to move to a big city. Maybe with trains they could stay there. So both in terms of relationships between people and stronger relationships between people lead to better economics and better competitiveness with regions across the world that already have this. In the process, we will lower our carbon emissions that are generated from transportation. And secondarily, because it can be a driver towards more walkable communities, as people are walking more for their daily trips, it'll reduce the pollution in that way as well. And then the third is, again, reducing government spending, because as we've spread out, that means a lot of pipe in the ground to serve these, you know, for utilities. It means additional parking expenses that we wouldn't have otherwise, etc. So we think this is a really exciting tool for becoming a lot more competitive and dealing with the challenges that we have going forward. And one of the advantages is you can actually talk to each other face to face while you're on the train, as these people are doing on a TGV someplace in France. And right now, the fastest trains in France are going 205 miles an hour. So we don't see this high-speed rail as a standalone system. It's more like the interstates, which are the high-speed trunk lines. And then you've got lots of things connecting to, on the highway side, connecting to the interstate, different kinds of roads that connect to the interstate. So the high-speed lines are the interstate highways. Regional lines are kind of like the busy inside the urban area, or, you know, a 4-lane out in the country. And then shared use lines are more like the local roads or the 2-lane road, where in this case, on shared use lines, you're sharing with freight trains. The regional lines are primarily for passenger, and the high-speed lines are only for high-speed trains going very fast. In order to understand how to do this and how to phase it, you really need to think big picture. So right now, our planners really just think about city pair to city pair, which led to a problem actually in Milwaukee, because they hadn't really talked about a statewide plan and how pieces would fit together. And so Tommy Thompson, when he put together his plan, they really focused on Milwaukee to Madison, even though it was an extension of Chicago to Milwaukee. And then that set the groundwork for going up to St. Paul, up to Green Bay for better bus connections to rural areas, et cetera. But because they didn't have this integrated statewide vision, it was really looked like it was just about Milwaukee to Madison. So it made it easy. So Governor Thompson got this program started. He put together a really good plan, though they didn't communicate about it very well. Governor Doyle got the money. And then Governor Walker actually, before even taking office, was able to kill it. And what a huge loss that was. If it weren't for that, you would have high quality Amtrak service today, Chicago, Milwaukee, Madison, and Watertown. And then the last piece of this is we need trains that are very, very different than what we're running today. A lot lighter and able to get in and out of stations faster. Results in being able to get over the road faster without better top speeds, and actually reduces the cost of operation. So these are the three pieces. This is a shared use line. I just want to point out some features. You can have grade crossings up to 90 miles an hour. It's it's a good idea to close them in any case. So you'll see here they closed one. They closed this one and kind of focused the traffic here. But then there used to be a grade crossing that is where I am standing when I'm taking this picture that had a lot of trucks. So they built a bridge over, right? It's really a good idea to separate the roads from the trains no matter what, but you really need to do it faster than 110 is the regulations. You should separate the big heavy freight trains from passenger trains at 90 miles an hour. Diesel's okay. And on the track, as you'll go through this, you'll see the track looks the same, right? But in this case, if you were sitting at a grade crossing where the freight train was going by, you would see that the track flexes just a little bit to deal with the heavy loads that are there. This is a regional line here. So this is privately owned, focused on freight with some passenger. This is publicly owned by Northern Indiana Commuter Transportation District. It's called the South Shore. It's publicly owned, focused on passenger, but it has freight trains and it's electrified. So that's at one end of the regional scale. This is at the other end of the regional scale where the Acela trains run. Again, publicly owned from Boston to Washington. They did a program to separate the roads from the tracks over a period of years. There's still a couple left in Connecticut, but really prefer to not have those grade crossings. There are sections of it where freight trains are running on the track shared with passenger trains. Not preferred, but it's doable. Sometimes there's separate tracks for the express trains and for the local trains like you see here. But for most of it, it's shared. The fast trains are also shared with the local commuter trains, as you see a SEPTA train. The track is getting a little bit more rigid than you have on the other, but again, it pretty much looks the same as what you had. And then the third is a high-speed line for 160 miles an hour and above. And in this case, again, you've separated the grade crossings, but this is the line going between Milan and Bologna. And they decided to build a large part of it alongside the Autostrada, or as we would call it, I-94, right, between Madison and Milwaukee. They did that so that the impact to the community would be reduced because they're just extending the bridges out over the new tracks alongside the road. There is still the old shared use line with very frequent passenger train service on it and freight trains. And I was able to take a train from Milan to a station that's about 2 miles east of this point and walk on country roads and through a farm field to get here. And again, I'm on a bridge that allowed the farmers to continue to access these pieces of land. But the point of this, showing that the 3 different tracks pretty much look the same, is that if you're willing to make some compromises, you can have track that's built for trains going 200 miles an hour that the trains that are going 200 miles an hour only run on that track, but you could have a train that goes slower, you know, perhaps 160, but so it can go 160 on the new high-speed track, but then be shared at 80 or 90 miles an hour with the freight trains. And what that allows you to do is take one segment of high-speed track and then have a number of routes feeding into it. And there's different ways of doing this. This is one diagram to just kind of show how these pieces fit together. So out in the country maybe is where you build the new high-speed track. The old line is still serving with much better service than what we have today. The communities on that line. Maybe there's one node in the middle where you've got a lot of stuff feeding in, regional lines feeding into a high-speed line, connections to airports like Mitchell Field, perhaps O'Hare. This all fits together, but you really have to have states, regions, and the federal governments putting together a master plan so you know how these pieces fit together. And then the last piece is new trains. So we do have new trains on the way. And these should be running between Chicago and Milwaukee within the next year or so. This is the first 4 coaches that were delivered last fall. They're out testing them right now. They're based on some coaches made for Brightline. And Brightline had a demonstration service in operation between Miami, West Palm Beach, and Fort Lauderdale pre-COVID. They intend to start running those trains again towards the end of the year. They are doing a shared use line from Miami to Cocoa, and then they're building a new 125 mile an hour top speed from Cocoa over to Tampa. That'll be more of a regional line. It's leading to possibly better commuter rail service in Orlando, better commuter rail service in Miami, and they will start hopefully in the next couple of years, service linking Orlando to Miami, and then they're negotiating with a number of entities for getting from Orlando over to Tampa. So this is the coach seats. You can see big wide windows that you can actually look out comfortably, lots of plugs. You can have a table if you want. There's just a few tables per car, so you don't have to have a table. Reclining seats, wide aisles. I want to point out there's no seat belts. Because trains are so much safer than driving and flying, you don't have to have a seatbelt, which means you can open your laptop whenever you want. It's not like getting on a plane, you have to put it away. And you can get up and use the restroom whenever you want. And this is the business class on those trains. So we'll basically have the same basic type of equipment, only with blue seats instead of white. Moving forward. So we did a comparison of like Chicago to St. Paul. And the reason we got started, not St. Paul, St. Louis. The reason we got started in this, or our kind of our founding mantra, was if Madrid and Seville, which are substantially smaller than Chicago to Detroit or Chicago to St. Louis, and it's the same distance. If they can do that, the fastest trains pre-COVID were 2 hours and 20 minutes. If they can do that there, we can do it here. So this is a comparison of that service. Today, we've got 3 trains a day between Chicago and St. Louis. Pre-COVID, it was 5. Hopefully those will be coming back soon. About a 5.5 hour trip. And tickets ranging from $25 to $71. On the high-speed line in Spain, it's one of the first high-speed lines built in the world. It's probably the 4th or 5th. And so it's a little bit slower at 2 hours and 30 minutes. It's interesting, that's 300 miles. Today, Spain is doing Madrid to Barcelona, which is the distance of Chicago to St. Paul, in 2.5 hours. But on that line, they've got 10 trains a day, and United just has 4. And Southwest and American, the times actually line up. So you only have a choice of 4 times to leave St. Louis to go to Chicago. It seems faster in an hour and a half, but you have to leave that hour for your inspection, right? They have to look at you, they have to look at your luggage. Again, because trains are so much safer than flying, you don't have to do that for a train. So you don't have to add that hour. And then driving for this trip is about the price of gas. The price of gas is about the cost of Amtrak. If you were to charge your company, it's substantially more. So the travel options in these, in France, you would probably have a $50 fare instead of a $71 fare. And then this is a comparison. There's a nonprofit that's put together a database of cities so that you can do comparisons of what kind of pollutions you would create on those trips. And this is, you know, clearly a clear reduction with taking the train. It's about 10 lanes of highway per track. This is the high-speed line between Frankfurt and Cologne. And then you've got over on the left-hand side, you've got the noise pollution is a lot more on the highway. You've got the tires rubbing off and getting into the waterways. You've got the drippings off the oil pan into the waterways, etc. And then right now there's a one-to-one comparison looking at Portland, Seattle, Vancouver, British Columbia, Washington State. They're right now in the process of figuring out how to put together the government entity that will build it. And they figure that adding a lane of highway, which saves about 5 minutes per trip, will cost more than twice the cost of building the new high-speed line. On the left-hand side, you've got all of those trip times cut in half for many cities in between, with expresses making the big stops and locals making the local stops. And so it's a game changer on the left. It really isn't much of a change on the right for a lot less money. And I want to point out, they have fjords and mountains, right? So building this here in the Midwest is about even half as much as building the high-speed line in Washington. California is way ahead of us on this. They've been for 30 years expanding their passenger train service across the country or across the state. Much better bus service than we have here. If we had a California style program, there'd already be 7 or 8 trains a day from Madison to Milwaukee to Chicago. This is an Amtrak train at a town called Oceanside, where they have 16 Amtrak trains a day plus commuter trains. In 2008, the voters approved building a new 220-mile-an-hour high-speed line between San Francisco and LA. That is under construction today. And then they have a challenge, like most places where you've got different agencies doing different things. So the state actually put together this integrated rail plan that I've been talking about that allows you to see how these pieces fit together. And they put that together in 2018. So now if they do this, this is the ridership for their base year in doing the planning between county to county. This is, of all of the things that the agencies are doing independently, this is what the ridership would be. If they spend a little bit of more money in order to coordinate it so that you can take one ticket for the trip and the buses all meet the trains and the train stations are built so you can easily make connections, this is what happens. So it's a huge, huge improvement. And it's across the entire state. It's not just about the big cities. So this is the different segments of high-speed line in different phases. So this is under construction today, a regional line here where they're taking a diesel commuter rail line and rebuilding it for 110-mile-an-hour commuter trains with European safety standards. That'll be shared between commuter and high-speed rail. The planning work for getting across the mountains between these valleys and this valley is almost done, as is the planning work to come down across these mountain ranges down into LA. They're under construction right now. The authority has identified the funding needed to get from Merced to Bakersfield. That's really the best place to get started in California because of the mountains and because of the connecting buses that already exist. And then there's a private company that's about ready to go to construction from here to Victorville, and they're planning to get across the mountains. The basic planning work is already done across the Palmdale. They're starting the planning work to get across the mountains, and then they'll rebuild the commuter line to get to LA. So it's a really exciting network there. But this middle segment, if they just start in the middle and get this running, they'll go from 7 trains a day to 18 trains a day. And that's key to having people switch from driving to taking the train. But not only that, each of these connecting bus lines sees dramatically improved service as well. And then they'll have 18 trains a day coming up on one of 3 routes. And these will be timed. The station would be built for an easy connection. The stations, existing Amtrak stations, are all already built for easy connections between buses and trains. This becomes very exciting. So they figure if they don't do that new segment, the ridership will be about this at 2030. If they do that new segment of high-speed line at more than doubles, or no, it kind of doubles. The revenue more than doubles if they do this. And so the cost of running the system actually goes down. And that's really exciting. So that's money the state can take and put elsewhere. So even though you're running more trains and more buses and carrying a lot more people, the cost that the state has to pay to the operators actually goes down. So this is what we would like the state to be thinking about. A new high-speed line across here in phases, right? So I mentioned Madrid to Barcelona, 2.5 hours, same distance. That provides the volume to get started, but Green Bay should have good high-quality passenger service. There should be a link between Chicago and Madison. There should be a much better transit link across here, and that becomes more viable as more people are taking the train in general. And then these bus lines up here already exist, and they should be increased in frequency going forward. Amtrak just recently proposed a plan for expanding Amtrak service across the state or across the country. We're excited about the map that they've put together. The details we need to really push to make sure that this is really frequent service, but that's exciting. Congressman Moulton from Boston has put together a proposal for true high-speed rail across the country in the kind of integrated network that we're talking about. Costa in California has put together a proposal, and President Biden last week released a proposal for getting this process started. So we've got a huge opportunity. The key is that people across the state, including those communities that would have improved bus service, need to get together and start saying, we need to make this happen. So here's what we would think of as a kind of a phase 1 network in Wisconsin. You really need to focus on Chicago to Milwaukee in order to make these other pieces happen. And this diagram helps to show why. So in order to have these frequencies up here, you really need to focus on getting either a regional line or a high-speed line built here. And we think there's a huge opportunity. So because the planning was pretty much already done, and the state already had this really good plan put together by Tommy Thompson, you could just take that plan and dust it off. And if the Biden proposal gets passed through, you could dust that off and get it started right away and have an early win. So I want to emphasize the administration is really talking about this as one way to really reinvent our economy for moving forward. It's a huge opportunity. You can get engaged at our website, or there's a quick overview of what we just talked about here at at our website. And you can also sign up for our newsletter or sign a petition there in order to get more engaged. So I'd be happy to take any at this point.
All right. Thanks, Rick. I'm off mute. Okay. Any questions from here? Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
I wonder how much effect will take place on the high-speed rail with more and more people working from home and not commuting. I know I was born and raised in the Northeast Corridor in Connecticut, and I know that the rail service between Bridgeport, Connecticut and New York City was quite high, and now it's changed considerably. So my question is, how is that going to affect the rail service? And then I have a second question, and that is, do you anticipate the rail service ever being totally self-sufficient and not using federal dollars to augment them like we do for Amtrak right now?
So the first question is the change in the travel market. We don't know, but we do know it will be different. We've had a problem where, because our public transit systems are focused on journey to work, that's actually the most expensive service to provide. You really need to have those assets being used throughout the day. So we need to, in any case, attract more non-journey to work trips. And we see this as an opportunity to really invent the transit system in order to do that. And I want to be clear, I view airplanes as public transit. So the facilities are publicly owned. We just spent billions and tens of billions of dollars to keep them operating. It's a whole big public transit network. The second question about having them, not need to provide federal operating money to maintain the system, that will be possible the day that we stop having federal money in the highway network. We created a myth in this country that highways were entirely paid for by gas taxes. It has absolutely never been true. And it's been less true over the years. And then you've got a lot of other public sources of money going into the supporting infrastructure for the federal highway network. And then the other thing is, we have been subsidizing and requiring a type of housing development that really is not very cost effective. And we're continuing to do that today with the Fed buying tens of billions of dollars of mortgage loans every month in order to keep the housing market moving. So I don't see transportation as a for-profit business. There are pieces of it that can be for-profit.
Okay, maybe one more question. Anybody online have a question? Okay, any other questions in here? All right, great. Now these high-speed trains, are they gas powered, electric, or how are they powered?
So you can have diesel up to 125 miles an hour. It's preferred if you have a high frequency line to have electricity or electric wires that power the train. But to go faster than 125, you do need to electrify.
Okay. And obviously the infrastructure bill is in the huge political debate right now. Did high-speed rail make it into that, or is it a separate initiative that's being talked about?
We think it should be part of it, and it can be part of it if folks around the country tell their congressmen that they want it to be part of it.
So, but is it part of the initial proposal that you know of?
It is part of the Biden proposal that was released last week. The infrastructure bill that made it through the House last year, but will have to be reintroduced. But it did make it through the House last year, and it had a big program for expanding passenger rail.
Well, obviously, as leaders and politicians debate things, it's obviously they have to look at pros and cons of everything. So we shall see. But it was great to hear an update on this initiative. Obviously, trains. I know you can go to Milwaukee right now and take a train down to O'Hare, but obviously it could be done more efficiently and such. So thanks for the update on that. I I know that you have spoken to other Rotary groups, so thanks for speaking to us this morning. And what we do on behalf of our speakers, we donate funds to Rotary International for 25 children in the world to be inoculated against polio in your honor for your time and effort this morning to be with us. So thanks. Have a great rest of the week. For those of us here in the room, so thanks, appreciate it. The rest of it in the room, let's end the meeting. Everybody stand and we'll do the four-way test as we leave this meeting and go back out into the world of life and work. Of the things that we think, say, and do, let us remember to ask ourselves first, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? All right, thanks everybody. Some April showers, hopefully they'll bring May flowers.
Some of them are already coming
They're
up.
already coming up.
Daffodils.